Hello YouTube, this is Froogle, and this is at long last the first ever prepared version 4. I gotta get the right gravitas on this. Fully loaded. What fully loaded means, if you are new to the channel, I know many thousands of you are, fully loaded videos are what really built the Froogle Sim channel. They are me taking the simulator to its absolute limits by loading as much stuff into it as I possibly can, including custom aircraft, custom scenery, custom traffic, and so on and so on. Typically also fully loadeds are recorded on more than one PC. I actually have the workload of the add-ons that feed into the sim spread across multiple PCs. So the main PC here is my custom built flight sim PC. You can read its specs at youtube.com/FroogleSim/about. I'm also running an Alienware 15R3 over here, which is currently handling the weather, and also the Aerosoft EFB, which is going to be used for some of our flight planning and flight tracking during this flight. Before we get started, let me feed you a complete list of everything that is being used in this fully loaded video, because I always get asked that question and no doubt I'll forget to type something up. First of all, we will be today flying the brand new Aerosoft CRJ 700, which is what you're looking at right here. The view switching you just saw take place is being handled by FSFX Package's Chase Plane. Weather is being provided by ActiveSky 2016 for prepared version 4. Weather textures are being provided by ActiveSky Cloud Art and Rex 4 Texture Direct, the new one for prepared version 4. The scenery, we're flying between Chicago and Memphis. In both cases, Chicago and Memphis, the airports are provided by FS Dream Team. In addition to all of that, you'll notice there's a ton of extra aircraft at this airport, and many of them are moving around. That is Ultimate Traffic Live for prepared version 4. I have the traffic settings in Ultimate Traffic Live set to 100%. Other scenery outside of that, we're using Orbex FTX Global, Orbex FTX Vector, and Orbex FTX Open Land Class North America. The flight plan for today's flight was built using Aerosoft's PFPX flight planner. You're not going to see that in today's video. I'm going to skip the entirety of flight planning, well, most of it. You're going to see some of it in a second. It's a very short flight. The CRJ 700 is a short-range regional airliner that rarely does flights over an hour to an hour and a half in length, and the flight actually just has 3 waypoints in it, which you'll see very, very shortly. Other than that, I am flying with MFG crosswind rudder pedals, the Virtual Fly TQ6 throttle quadrant, and the Virtual Fly Yoko the yoke. I'm also managing my views with a Razor Orb Weaver. So that's pretty much everything. I don't think I've missed anything there. Hopefully that satisfies all the questions. So, this is actually going to be a mixed, fully loaded and review, because I've not done any videos yet on the Aerosoft CRJ, and there it is. It's actually a lot of fun. I did a test live stream of this yesterday on Facebook, and a question that came out of that is this a study level aircraft? Now, I consider study level to be something like the Majestic Dash 8, the Airbus Labs A320, and of course the PMDG aircraft that come with many hundreds of pages of documentation where you're going to go nowhere if you don't read and study that documentation and really learn how the aircraft works, performs, and what you're supposed to do. The Aerosoft CRJ, actually Digital Aviation, published by Aerosoft CRJ, is kind of entry-level, study level. It's not as deep as, say, a PMDG aircraft or the Flight Sim Labs A320 or something like that. It does have a learning curve to it. It is tricky to fly, but it's not quite hardcore study level. That said, it's not completely point and fly. You know, it's not like a Coronado aircraft where you don't even need to read anything, just jump in and go flying. It does require a little bit of effort. So it's kind of middle of the range, very much actually like the Aerosoft Airbus X series were. They weren't quite study level, they weren't quite entry level, they were somewhere in the middle. Anyway, as I said, we are at Chicago for this very short 1 hour long flight from Chicago to Memphis. Let me whiz on over to the other computer. It's fully loaded, and we'll look at the flight plan. So here it is. As you can see, there are just 3 waypoints here, from Chicago O'Hare to CM Sky, Sybil, and then PXV. Very, very simple. The flight plan was actually loaded into the Aerosoft EFB from PFPX, which produced a proper prepared flight plan. So I'll go ahead and activate that. By the way, air traffic control is being provided today by the built-in normal air traffic control. Because I'm using the Aerosoft EFB and it tends to update the route in the sim live, I found that the built-in ATC actually works pretty well. Let me show you what the Aerosoft EFB can do if you've never seen it before. So we are currently at KORD, and you can see it's a bunch of aircraft taxiing and moving around. I can zoom in there. We are here. If I click on this button here, it will lock. There we go. That's our aircraft right there. And as you can see, I've got traffic turned on. These are all aircraft waiting to go. You can see here aircraft actually lining up, going down Mike taxiway, ready to take off. Now, we need to plan our departure. Out of Chicago, departures are normally handled vectored by air traffic control, so there's no set departure in here. By the way, here's all the other aircraft that are flying around. As I said, I have Ultimate Traffic Live running 100% of the real traffic, and this is real traffic. You'll see here looking at the list, we've got American up here, SkyWest, United down here, Spirit Wings. You'll probably no doubt see some Allegiant popping up from now on, from time to time, as well as Delta. They are real live traffic for this airport, for this time and for this day, which is pretty darn awesome. Anyway, for a departure, we can click on departure here. Normally you'd get a SID overview and get to choose the SID. There is none. En route, there's not much to do down here. It's just going to track our flight. Now the arrival is actually pretty interesting. We are expecting to arrive on runway 36 right, I think it is. So I'm going to choose 36 right, 36 right, and we're going to use the Bluz 1 star. So I'll select that, and our final waypoint, as you saw on the route earlier, if our final waypoint on the route is PXV, then our entry, our transition into the star is PXV. I'll click on that and click on activate. And that will draw the complete star here, along with the altitude constraints and everything else. Now the transition out of the star and onto the runway, we'll go ahead and choose that now. Select the approach, 36 right, ILS runway 36 right. There is no hard transition. We'll just click on that and click on activate. And what that's telling us here, if I can move this map around, it's a little bit tricky to get the hang of. There you go. You can see here that the route kind of ends. We're expecting vectors from air traffic control at that point. In fact, given that it is default ATC, we'll probably get vectors from way back here as Prepared's ATC takes over and tries to direct us as to where it would like us to go. Simple as that. Back over to the sim. There is the beautiful CRJ. It really is a beautiful aircraft, and it's a huge challenge to fly. It's short range. It does have all the electronics and automation you would expect, except one vital feature is missing in the real aircraft, as well as this Aerosoft one, which is auto throttle. The lack of an auto throttle means this is a very hands-on aircraft, even in auto flight. So even once you have the autopilot running, you need to be monitoring the instruments throughout the flight and really staying on top of what the power settings are to make sure you don't overspeed or anything weird like that. It does have some helpful stuff built in as well, most notably something called Dave. Let me introduce you to Dave. There's Dave. There's a little iPad on the side, and what it does is let me handle sim configuration. So if I click on the power button here, you can see I can access my checklists, payload and fuel, V-speeds, options, ground services, maintenance, and so on. So without further ado, let's click on ground service and we'll connect ground power. Ground power is now connected, as you can clearly tell. And what I will do now is I will go ahead and... I was going to connect the jetway, but I won't. Let's go up to payload and fuel. Now there is a complete configuration tool that runs outside of the sim to handle payload and fuel for the CRJ. I don't like it. I prefer to do everything with Dave because using flight planning tools like SimBrief or PFPX, you tend to get a zero fuel weight, maybe a breakdown as cargo weight and passenger weight. And what that configuration tool wanted me to do is set where each passenger is sitting. And I'm not too good at positioning everybody in the right seats to get the right balance of the aircraft. So we're not going to do that. But we can use this tool very easily. I know from PFPX this is a full flight, so it's 70 passengers. So I can click on the double plus, we're at 70 passengers. Now I know my cargo, well I actually don't know my cargo. What I do know from PFPX is that my zero fuel weight should be 61,109 pounds. You can see here my zero fuel weight is quite a lot under that. So what we'll do is we'll start increasing by hundreds the cargo until we reach 61,109 in terms of the zero fuel weight, or as close to it as we can possibly get. There you go. So if I start dropping this down, now I can't quite get 61,109, or can I? Yes, I can. Let's just keep on clicking the shorter. There we go, 61,109. That is our zero fuel weight. That exactly matches what I have in my flight plan from PFPX. Now the fuel, our release fuel today for this rather short trip is a measly 8,147 pounds. So we'll drop this down to 8,000. Notice the overweight warning has now gone away. 8,147. I went too far. 7,800. There we go. So we'll drop this down now, 8,147, or again, as close as you can possibly get. So I'm probably not going to get 8,147. I'm probably going to get 8,148. But we'll see. Just keep on clicking there. Drop, 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 drop. Quite a lot of clicking. But it's worth it. I find this to be a darn sight easier. 8,100. A darn sight easier than using the highly complex full configuration tool. Come on now. That works. 8148. Now I can set payload and fuel into the aircraft itself. I can also copy this data over to PerfInit as part of the CDU setup. By the way, fully loaded flights are usually pretty good tutorials. If you're brand new to the CRJ or thinking of buying it, you might get some tips here as to how to manage it. I'm not an expert. I've only done a few flights with it, but I'm enjoying it. Okay, so with all that done, there is one add-on that I did miss and failed to point out, which is GSX. We're going to be using GSX for our ground service stuff, so the first thing we're going to want to do, of course, is fire up GSX over here, tell it activate, and we would like the catering service to come and start loading up all the food and snacks for people. It will be handled by American, because that's who we are, and Gate Gourmet. If we pop outside now, you can see the GPU there. Trucks moving around, and any second Gate Gourmet will turn up with the food and snacks and start loading the aircraft for that. We'll need to open some doors, and we'll use Dave to manage those doors. Actually, the cargo trucks are getting ready to load as well. Very cool stuff. Oh, here comes Gate Gourmet now. Over here, there's an aircraft landing in the background. Now, by the way, Flight Ultimate Traffic Live is still very much beta. I have seen some issues with it, with runway incursions from other aircraft and stuff like that. Not a big deal. I've not been affected by it. I've just seen it in watching the traffic go about its business. A couple of aircraft moving back there as well. Here come Gate Gourmet. They're going to line up on the front of the aircraft and get ready to load in the snacks and soft drinks and beers. Not even sure there is a snack service on a flight this short, but we'll do it anyway. And they're going to want me to open the doors to the aircraft, so let's pop back inside and we'll go down to Dave to handle that. Here's the doors, and it's going to ask us to open the front service door, so we'll open that now. Pop outside and you can see that. Doors are open, and now Gate Gourmet are going about their business. So while they go about their business, let's go about ours and get this aircraft ready to actually fly. So, back into the cockpit. Down to Dave, go to the home screen, checklists. We're going to do the safety check first. Circuit breakers closed. Circuit breakers don't work in this aircraft. We're not going to worry about that. Nose wheel steering needs to be off. There it is. The hydraulic pumps all need to be off as well. They're all up here, and they are all currently, all four of them, off. Back down to Dave. Landing gear lever needs to be in the down position, and it most certainly is. Flaps and flight spoilers all need to be 0 and up. Let's go ahead and check all that stuff. If I can find the right view, here it is. Yes, they are all up. Everything is good there. The ADG manual release and emergency flaps now need to be stowed and normal. So that's all the way down here. And I did actually miss radar. So while we're down here, we'll look at that. Here's the radar. I'll make sure that that is off. And yes, these are all stowed, and that's normal. APU, we're not going to start the APU just yet. Fuel is precious, we'll save that till just before engine start. Electrics as required. So we have the GPU on. Let's turn the battery on now as well. Wait for that to power everything up. There it goes. And we have AC from ground power now connected as well. Next up, set the IRSs to nav and handle the alignment procedure, which is done. Emergency equipment doesn't bother us. We're in a sim, same as gear and safety pins. They're not modeled in this aircraft. Airplane documents, I have them all on my trusty Windows Surface machine next to me. Hydraulic 3A switch needs to go on. That's up here, and that's that switch there. It needs to go on. And now we can initialize the FMS down here. So the first thing we're going to do is POS init, or position initialized. Works very much the same as it does in a Dash 8, or actually in a Boeing aircraft. We need to tell it a reference airport, KORD. They want us to close the galley door. We'll go and do that in a second. And then pick up, it's a shortcut, pick up the FMS position and set that down here. That's all done. It wants us to close the door urgently, so let's go ahead and do that. Doors, front service door, closed. There we go, all done. Let's carry on with the initialization down here. Having done all of that, by the way, there are secondary and trinary pages in here, and you can further check the aligned coordinates that you have. What I've just done is all you need to do for this aircraft. Like I said, not quite study level, but getting close. Into the flight plan. Our flight plan is very simple, as you saw earlier. So we are flying from KORD out to Memphis, which is Kilo Mike Echo Mike. Done. Our alternate today is Kilo Alpha Whiskey Mike. We'll put that in here as the alternate. The runway that we expect to get, it could change, but the runway we expect to get is 09 right today. So I'll put that in here. Now it wants the route. Now because this is a short route, we're not using jetways. Everything is actually direct, so it's a very easy route to key in. CM Sky, first of all. Put that in as the first waypoint. Next page, next waypoint is Sybil. C-Y-B-I-L. Whoops, I spelled that wrong. C-Y, not C-V. Delete, delete, delete. Okay, C-Y-B-I-L. You can pick up these routes, by the way, very easily from Flight Aware as well if you don't want to do the planning yourself. The only challenge you're going to have if you do that is you're not going to know the fuel that you need to have on board. But the complete config tool will do a good job of figuring that out for you as well. Final waypoint, Papa X-Ray Victor. Done. With all that, we can click on exec or execute and then go to perf init. Now notice it doesn't know the passenger weight or the cargo weight. This is where Dave comes in. Go back on over here, go home, payload and fuel, and then copy data to perf init, which means when we go back to the CDU or MCDU, that's all filled in for us. Our cruising altitude today is 38,000 feet. Our alternate cruise, if we do have to divert from Memphis, we won't, but if we do have to divert from Memphis, it's going to be 14,000 feet. We'll put that in, and again, execute. Now VNAV setup, just check everything here. Target speed is Mach 0.74, transition altitude is 18,000 feet, speed limit up to 10,000 is 250 knots. Look at the next page here. Here is our cruise, again, Mach 0.74 at flight level 380. Next page, and our VNAV descent. We're going to be descending at 290 or Mach 0.074. Transition level is flight 180. Speed limit is 10,000 feet, limiting us to 250. We are pretty much done. That's all there is to it. So yes, FMS initialization is complete. So back on over to Dave and our handy checklists. Having done the safety check, the next check is the originating check. Internal and external pre-flight checks are complete. Pedals, seats and harnesses are adjusted. Crew oxygen now needs to be tested. Very simple. You just click on that button to make sure you hear the oxygen flow. If you want to, there are full sets of ICAS pages here that you can use to verify what just happened as well. They update these screens here and here. Incidentally, all these screens pop out, which you'll see in a minute is actually very, very useful. Panel is checked, fire detection and fire monitors and all that good stuff. We need to go ahead and do all that. Well, let's turn these warnings off first of all. We'll pop on down here and we'll do the MLG or main landing gear overheat tests first of all. By clicking and holding. That's all good. And a warning. That's all good. Do the lights test. And we can look around the cockpit at this point and make sure everything that should be lit up is lit up. Pop on back down there again. We'll turn that off and do test number 2. We're all good there. We'll turn that off. I'm going to leave the indicator lights as bright. Back over here, fuel panel, checked. Well, yep, fuel, nothing is on, we're all good there. We can go ahead and check the fuel page as well on ICAS here. Whoops, I went wrong. Just to make sure and confirm everything is off, which it is. And we had the expected amount of fuel on board as well. Bleed air panel. Well, we are going to be starting the APU at some point, so we'll turn this onto APU as the bleed air source. Nothing else to do here. Very simple aircraft to manage. APU panel, we're not dealing with the APU just yet. Start panel needs to be checked just to make sure it's all off here. which it currently is. Hydraulics panel, checked. We just did that. We turned on 3A and that's all good. ELT now needs to be armed or reset. So ELT switch is right here. That is on the arm reset position. Cabin pressurization panel. Just whiz up here. We'll make sure that manual rate is maximum decrease. Don't need to adjust anything here just yet. We will later. Air conditioning panel. We're not running air conditioning at this point. Now the ice systems. Now this is where we start getting into needing these pop-out panels. Because, let's pop this out. We'll whiz on down here and open the stat page. We need to view this while we're doing the ice test. The ice test switch is up here. Watch. Press this. ADS heat test OK. Click this again. And off it goes. I have found a bug in that shortly it's going to tell me ice detected, even though there is no ice detected. That warning tends to go away though as soon as we start the aircraft. Not a big deal. Back on down to Dave. Windshields. The windshield heaters need to be on low and the emergency lights now need to be armed. So windshield heaters onto the low position. Click, click. And the emergency light switch needs to be armed. By the way, in terms of the review, that's a little odd. I had to right click these switches to move them down one notch. Had to left click this switch to move it down one notch. Kind of odd. Takes a little getting used to. Back down to Dave. Standby compass is checked. Nose wheel steering. Let's make sure it's still off, which it is. Clocks are both set. Instrument panels checked. ICAS and standby instruments are checked. Anti-skid test. I'm not going to do that, actually. No need. MLG overheat, we already did that. Upper pedestal is checked. Thrust lever quadrant is checked. When we looked at the flaps and slats, yes, this is idle, fuel cutoff and everything else. Avionics checked, yes. Well, we can go ahead and do that actually here. Everything is as it should be. There are no warnings, there are no errors. Everything is good, and the warnings that we have down here as well are the ones that we would expect to see. There's the ice warning, just came up. See that? Ice. Yaw damper now needs to be engaged and the trims need to be set. Well, the trims we can again use from here. If we go into V speeds, there are handy tables in the documentation to calculate this stuff, or you can have Dave do it for you. So Dave, set the takeoff trim, set V1, VR, V2, VFTO, and V2 plus 10. Done. Pretty handy stuff. So now we can go ahead and check all that stuff down here. There's my V speeds. Everything's looking lovely. And we're all good to go. By the way, notice that V2 plus 10 has been set. There's V2 146, V2 plus 10 is 156. That's set over here, and it did it for us. We can go ahead and set up much of the rest of this stuff as well. So I know that, for example, let's pop this open. I know that my initial heading is going to be 090. We'll set that up. There, as long as we take runway 09 right. 156 is good, so we can actually do heading hold, speed hold. We don't know the initial altitude yet, so I won't set that. Back to the checklists. Lower pedestal, checked. Everything's good. Here did we set the yaw dampers already? I'm not sure that we did. We'll do that now. Yaw damper 1, yaw damper 2. And we'll check the displays here. They should be cleared, which I believe they are. So we're all good. Now let's go ahead and get the weather so we can set the barometric pressure. I need to grab my surface here so I can make notes of the information that comes out of this. Now because I'm using active sky, I don't need to talk to ATC to get the weather. I can just tune 122.00 and that's going to give us the weather right here. So we'll click on this, 122, dial it down, 122, dial it down to 00. There, and set. Oops, I got it wrong. Should be 122. There we go. Copy that over.
Kilo Oscar Romeo Delta Airport information Foxtrot 1351 Zulu weather wind 184 at 5 visibility 10 sky condition temperature 23 dew point 16 altimeter 3004 advise on initial contact you have information Foxtrot Kilo Oscar Romeo Delta Airport information.
So as you can hear, it's giving us wind of 184 at 5, so we might actually get a different runway than I'm expecting. But I have found when I've tried this flight before that the wind is shifting quite a lot. So we'll have to just wait and see. With all that done, let's go ahead and get clearance delivery and then we can start loading the passengers on board. So going to bring up the default ATC here. And we'll contact O'Hare clearance. Let me finish talking to the other aircraft they're talking to. They have, so we'll request our clearance now.
O'Hare, clearance delivery. American 5480, IFR, Memphis, ready to talk.
American 5480, cleared to Memphis Airport as filed. Fly runway heading climb and maintain wind 3000. Departure frequencies 133.1, squawk 1571.
Okay, so fly runway heading, climb and maintain 13,000, over to 133.1, squawk 1571.
American 5480, cleared to Memphis Airport as filed. Fly runway heading, climb and maintain 13,000. Departure on 133.1, squawk 1571.
American 5480, feedback is correct. Contact ground on 121.675. When ready to taxi.
Alright, so we're all good there. So let's go ahead and get GSX to start loading peoples and bags. We'll set our squawk code after that. Activate GSX once again and request boarding. Wants us to activate the jetway, which I will do. And we'll pop on down to Dave here and manage our doors. So doors, we are using a jetway. So we'll click on this one and then we will open the main exit, forward cargo and aft cargo. If we pop outside, you'll see those opening. There we go. Now GSX gets a little bit confused here and keeps telling me to open an exit when I actually don't need to. I'm going to ignore that. It's going to beep a little bit, but don't worry about it too much. So let's go ahead and set our squawk code, which we'll do down here. So we'll tune ATC 1. Click on the squawk code right here, and our squawk code is 1571. So wind this one up to 71. There's the passengers getting on board, very noisy. One 571 set. Make sure that that's on. As the X is used at this airport, we do need the transponder on while doing anything on the ground. Incidentally, now, by the way, I should go ahead, I should have done this sooner, turn the nav and the logo lights on as well. Back to the checklists. So our originating checks are complete. The next checklist is before start. We need to make sure passenger signs are on. Let's go ahead and do that. Right click to turn those both on. Back on down here now. Landing elevation needs to be set. Well, to do that, we need to go to the other computer here. I already have Memphis up here, and you can see that Memphis is, the aerodrome elevation is 340 feet. So back on over to the cockpit. Let's pop open our displays here. And it's this ICAS display has the landing elevation there. So I'm going to go up to the overhead, and I'm going to adjust landing elevation here to 340 feet. So we're turning that and go 340. We're all good. Back down to Dave. Altimeters. Haven't set those. The barometric pressure was 3004, I believe. So let's go ahead and do that. Now this is tricky. Just because of the placement. I understand from my live stream yesterday that there is an update to this aircraft to turn off the yoke. I don't have that update, so I got to do this the hard way. I'm going to turn 2992 here to 3004. Like so. And we're all good. Back over to Dave. Nav aids, we're not really going to worry too much about nav aids. We could, if we go back on over to the other computer and look at departure. Well, actually no, we're going to fly runway heading and do whatever we're told to do. So there are no nav aids to worry about, really. I'm just going to leave that exactly as it is. By the way, back in the cockpit here, you can set the radios to auto-tune. They're currently set to auto-tune. So the aircraft will automatically set nav 1 and nav 2 as it needs to cross-reference what the FMS and what the GPS is telling us about our aircraft's position. Back on over to Dave. Takeoff briefing. Well, not much to brief about really. All the usual stuff. We're going to taxi out to the runway, take off, maintain our heading as we are instructed to, and climb up to 13,000 feet, which I have not set on the MCB. I will set that up now because we were waiting for that, weren't we? So 13,000 feet, which is an unusually high altitude actually, leaving Chicago. Normally I get about 6,000 to 8,000, and we'll set this into altitude and speed. Okay, so altitude is armed, heading is set, climbing at a speed of 156. And that's all there is to that. Now, because we don't have an auto throttle, when we take off, the aircraft's autopilot and the flight director, incidentally, if we're not using autopilot, will direct us to maintain pitch based on the current power settings to hold that speed, 156. Obviously, once we clear 1,000 feet, we'll increase that to about 190, then up to 250. But again, the flight director and autopilot are just going to manage pitch to control the speed, which is kind of old school in many ways, very engrossing as well. Even if you do fly on autopilot, there's a lot of stuff to do in this aircraft. Boarding apparently is complete. Let's take a look outside and make sure, yep, everybody's done. The last baggage guy is about to leave. There he goes. So let's go ahead and close all the doors. So doors, we will close the main exit, close the cargo door, and close the other cargo door. We can check on that. There they go. I should have moved the jetway. I just ripped off half of the jetway nose there. Done. Let's see what Dave wants us to do next. So clear to start is the next one. Personal electronic devices for the people on board need to be off. APU gets turned on, papers on board, so we can run through that now. To do that, we're going to need to contact air traffic control and get permission to taxi. They are going to route us as well, and we can feed that into the Aerosoft DFB to help us with the taxi, because Chicago is a pretty large airport and it can be very easy to get lost. So let's pop on over here. We'll call for taxi.
O'Hare, ground, American
That is taxi.
5480 with Papa, ready to taxi IFR. American 5480, taxi to and hold short of runway 9er right, using taxiway Alpha Romeo Hotel Juliet. Contact tower on 127.925 when ready.
Alright, taxi via Alpha Romeo Hotel Juliet to 9 right, contact tower 127.95 when ready. We will acknowledge.
Hold short runway 9er right, using taxiway Alpha Romeo Hotel Juliet. American 5480. O'Hare ground 4114 with Papa, ready to
Alright, we're good. So let's go back on over to the EFB and we'll set in that taxi route over here, which is a cool feature of this EFB, by the way. Click on ground here, select taxiways. We're going to go taxi to runway from our current position to 9 right. And we'll be going via Alpha. We'll scroll down here, Romeo, Hotel, Juliet, OK. And there's our taxi route. See this purple line here? All the way down to 9 right. So that's all set. Let's go back over and start getting this aircraft ready to start and to push back. So down to Dave for the checklist. APU. We need to deal with the APU right now. So the APU, the first thing we're going to do is start the APU pumps and also open the door at the back, the APU door, which is basically the exhaust port. Whoops, losing my views here. So we'll move this out of the way. Click on here. APU in-bite SOV open. In-bite just went away, which means we're cleared to start. We have the APU dials here and door open. Click on start. Alright, so ground power is available, but the APU is now online. Let's make sure that we're actually set up here. We are. So now we can go ahead and disconnect the ground power. So back down to Dave for that. Click on here, ground services and maintenance, ground power off, wheel chocks off. We'll set the parking brake. Okay, good. Back to our checklist. So the APU is good and started, papers are on board, takeoff data has been set, doors are closed and locked. We can verify that by going down here, clicking on doors, and then looking at the ICAS display. All the doors are green, they are closed. Put this back to stat, back over to Dave. Fuel pumps now need to go on, beacon needs to go on. So we're going to turn the fuel pumps on and the beacon. So beacon, fuel pumps, these are the cross flows, we're not going to turn those on yet. Beacon and fuel pumps are on. Hydraulic pumps need to go auto and on. So, whoops, right click again. Again, that's that weirdness. Auto, on, auto, auto. We're all good. Parking brake has been set. Now we're good for engine start. So to do that, we'll call GSX. Activate ground services. Ready for pushback. We're going to be on the inner facing north, which is basically pushback and turn left. Do I want to start the engines before pushback? No. And we'll let them get all set up to push us back. Pop on outside and take a look.
Hello, Captain. We are ready for pushback. Locking gear. Departure check completed. Flight contact inserted. Remain parking brakes.
Okay, time to release the brakes.
Commencing push. All engines clear. Start that wheel.
Now we can start the engines. Very simple to start these engines. Just click on the start button. Then we'll pop down here. I actually need to pop this open. We're looking for 20% N2. And then we can introduce fuel here and move to idle. 15%. 18. 19. 20. Move the lever up. A little bit too much, but that's fine.
SkyWest 3089er, request taxi to the gate. SkyWest 3089er, taxi to gate.
Let that engine stabilize.
Using taxiway Sierra 3 Sierra, Mike 7 Mike, Mike 5 Delta, Alpha 16.
Good.
Taxi to gate.
Engine number 1 now.
15 via taxiway Sierra 3 Sierra, Mike 7 Mike, Mike 5 Delta, Alpha 16.
Again, looking for 20%.
Board 114, hold position, caution, on final. Hold position, board 114.
Done. I'm going to sync my throttles now. Good.
Ground 905. Request taxi to south parking.
905, taxi to general aviation parking via taxiway 2.
We'll close this off.
November, Kilo, 1 Kilo.
Taxi to general aviation parking.
And our after start check now. Gen 1 and Gen 2 need to be on auto.
905.
Auto.
Set
Auto.
parking brakes.
DC service on. Parking brake set. Back down to Dave. Bleed valves and packs auto and on.
O'Hare ground, Cessna November 3.
Auto.
3, 217, taxi to parking.
On. Air conditioning now can run. Resuck fans can go on.
General aviation parking using taxiway uniform 3 uniform whiskey tango.
APU. We can turn the APU off at this point. In fact, we need to, because if I pop outside and change the view around, you can see the door for the APU there. That needs to be closed, really. Otherwise, we're going to have a problem in flight. So I'm going to get the APU shut down and close that door
Connected. Bypass being removed.
by popping up here, and we will stop the APU. In fact, I need to bring up that ICAS display so I can make sure everything's working. Stop the APU. Let it calm down and cool down, then we'll close the door by clicking on this.
Left is clear. Right is clear.
Looking good, let's close the door. Door closed. Pop back down to Dave. So the APU is off, anti-ice as required, probes need to go on. That would be here. Nose wheel steering needs to go on. Let's close that. There. We have not set, we've got warnings up here for Mac and stabilizer trim, which are these buttons down here. So stabilizer trim, on, Mac trim, on. Nose wheel steering is armed. Taxi check, slats and flaps. Well, we want 8 degrees, so we're going to pull this down here and you'll see the flap indicator moving. Should be about there. Let's see what it does.
O'Hare ground 882, taxi to south parking.
So that's good.
2, taxi to general
Flight controls check.
using taxiway Sierra.
Well, we'll pop open this display, run down here, click on flight controls. Where is flight controls? There it is.
Using taxiway
And check this. So, elevator,
Mike Zulu Hotel November 882.
ailerons, rudder. We're good. I'm not going to test the full extent. You get the idea. We'll put this back onto stat. Back on over to date. That's all good. Trims are green and checked. Thrust reversers now should be armed. That's basically our aborted takeoff there. RTO. FMS is already set to auto tune. I already showed you guys that. Flight instruments, let's check them. Pop this open. Yep. Heading. Heading hold at 090, climbing 156, altitude up to 13,000, flight director is on, barometric pressure is set, our V speeds are all set, looks like we're good. Brake temp is fine, so now we have a before takeoff check, which we're not going to worry about. Oh, co-pilot just sneezed. We will, however, turn on the taxi lights. Beacon is already on, and we are good to taxi.